Hello there, Commonwealth from me. With no Tears of the Kingdom DLC, director Maru Fujibayashi having a vision for the future, plus recruitment pages with interviews with Zelda composer, one thing is clear. The Zelda team has taken the next step. But it begs the question, how long will it take until a new Zelda game is ready in the second half of the 2020s? And more importantly, will the first next Zelda be open air or return to top-down before that? Well, in this video, after you leave a like, subscribe and ring that bell, let's go over the next step for the franchise. And we will start with top-down, since I'm sitting with this feeling that Nintendo will not wait until the late 2020s to bring us another new Zelda game, especially with the big 40th anniversary in the first full year of the new system, 2026. Some have been pointing to the possibility that this could be replaced by a rumored Ocarina of Time 4K remake. Even so, who is to say that this game might be planned for sooner? Say 2025 or close to the launch of the system, just as was the case with the 3DS and its version of Ocarina of Time in 2011. But wait, Ocarina 3D was followed by Skyward Sword in 2011. That is right, but for two different systems, one handheld and one TV. Now we only have one, the hybrid, meaning no two separate physical Zelda releases within the same year. At the same time, why even bother with the less popular top-down Zelda formula, since it has become far more popular on the Nintendo Switch. 6.5 million for Link's Awakening, same as the best Zelda remake of all time, Ocarina of Time 3D's total sales. Add to that, Ocarina was launched right next to the 3DS's launch, while Link's Awakening was in our hands 2.5 years into the new system's lifecycle. With this in mind, just think what a brand new title could achieve. That's right, around 10 million copies. More than satisfying. Add to that the potential this format holds after the comeback of classic 2D Nintendo games to universal acclaim. Metroid Dread in 2021 and Super Mario Bros. Wonder in 2023, both Game Awards winners. Now imagine a top-down Zelda title with the same mindset as those two games. Revolutionary, while at the same time narrowing the gap between 2D top-down and 3D Zelda. Funny enough, Super Mario Bros. Wonder even had top-down sections, showing Zelda that we can have this type of perspective in a new game in the 2020s. Something familiar, but at the same time different, that will get all Zelda fans on board from the moment of the reveal trailer. A game that will give the open-air Zelda team more than enough breathing space, especially if a new 2D Zelda becomes the 40th anniversary Zelda title in 2026. And this is the thing, we should not sleep on 2D Nintendo franchise games, especially not after the success of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, a game that sold over 12 million copies after a little over 2 months and keeps on growing. Seeing this, a new top-down Zelda is simply an untapped golden reservoir that could be what solidifies the success of Nintendo's new system after the release of a new 3D Mario and or Mario Kart. Even if it would come out in the same year as Pokémon, a September launch, so same as Link's Awakening Switch, is another hot tip. Less than 3.5 years after Tears of the Kingdom and around 3 years from the next open-air Zelda. It literally solves every headache Nintendo could possibly have and will make the wait for the next big map title far more enjoyable, even with the traditional, at this point, 3D Zelda delay. New top-down Zelda games, on the other hand, don't know the word delay. They always arrive on time, and when done as proper single-player adventures and not multiplayer experiences, they end up as instant classics that almost always sell well. Only Game Boy Advance, the Minish Cap, didn't get close to selling 3 million copies or more. And the reason why it didn't was that its release was ruined by being gradual, 2004 in Japan and Europe, and 2005 in North America and Australia. Plus, both of these was after the launch of the successor system, the DS. The above example is why I'm against a new top-down Zelda in the final months of an outgoing system, or any new Zelda in this timeframe for that matter. It is why Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild were delayed for the launch of the next system. Luckily for us, this will not be the case for a potential new 4K top-down Zelda and 4K next open-air Zelda, since the first might be within the first 20 months of the launch of the system, while the other at most 4 years after its launch. Significantly shorter than what was the case for Tears of the Kingdom. Speaking of open-air, let's transition to it since it is obviously the big seller, and depending on a new top-down Zelda, I would say that this one will either come in 2028 or 2029. We simply need to be realistic, and the long development time is probably the biggest argument for a new top-down Zelda in the middle of this wait. The alternative is 5, potentially even 6 years of waiting, depending on the level of ambition, or the more technical boundaries that the Zelda team headed by producer Eiji Aonuma and director Hidemaru Fujibayashi go after. Since following Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it is more clear than ever that story has taken a backseat or actually been thrown into the luggage compartment, as sandbox gameplay experimentation and leaving it up to the player is what triggers the Zelda team these days. With that being said, these new tools are often the main source of delays. The physics engine in 2015 and Ultra Hand in 2022. Another struggle like this will equal yet another delay unless the Kyoto Stars finally learn the lesson of not giving a date or even year until they are 100% in the clear. We simply don't want to see a release number until the team is certain that there will be no delays. So 5 to 6 months prior to the planned release. As for the game itself, it is obvious that the title needs to strike a better balance to fuse back a divided Zelda fanbase. It is really painful to talk about this, but our community has never been more divided. Not only do we have a linear 3D versus non-linear open-air divide, now we also have a Breath versus Tears divide. No matter what, one of the biggest issues with Tears of the Kingdom will be addressed in the next game. There will be a new map, but developing this one from scratch will naturally take time. Hence why I'm once again repeating. Earliest 2028, but more likely 2029, since the Zelda team always wants to surpass their previous title, and most of all, reclaim the Game of the Year awards, the Game Awards, Golden Joystick, GDC, BAFTA, and so on. But it requires a balanced act between traditional Zelda and Minecraft/GTA Sandbox, since Tears leaned more into the latter column at times. This near unlimited freedom combined with crazy mechanics had a cost. There have been no new top-down Zelda game. In our current situation, it was acceptable, as the Nintendo Switch was one of the few systems to get 2 brand new Zelda games, one at the launch and one late in its life cycle. But with the next system, this pattern cannot be repeated. It goes without saying, there will be no new 3D Zelda for the launch of the system, since a game of this scale, with the same level of ambition as Breath and Tears, is at the soonest coming 3 years into the system's lifecycle. That is unless it is a less ambitious 3D title. And this brings up another question. Are we as Zelda fans and gamers willing to accept a lesser experience? For many, that answer will be no. And as a result, I think the perfect balance in the second half of 2020s is the following. In 2025, start strong with a beloved remake like Ocarina of Time, now no longer just in 3D, but also in 4K. Then in 2026, give the first new top-down Zelda game in over a decade. An evolutionary jump comparable to what we saw from New Super Mario Bros. U to Super Mario Bros. Wonder, a top-down Zelda reinvented for the 4K age. Something that will blow us away despite its simplicity at its core. The perfect evolution of what was started 40 years prior in 1986. After this one in 2027, as we slowly start preparing for the next open-air Zelda, we have the perfect timing for Wind Waker 4K and or Twilight Princess 4K. Then, in 2028 or 2029, we can get the new open-air Zelda. At the same time, we have the alternative, namely top-down Zelda, for the launch of the system, and then a slightly less ambitious open-air Zelda title in 2027, potentially introducing a 2-year cycle between new Zelda titles for the next system. New game 2025, then 2027, and again in 2029, just as was the case between handhelds and TV console, almost up to the Nintendo Switch. And in between, remakes and remasters, and even Hyrule Warriors. A possible golden solution, a middle way that allows one new game while open air takes as much time as it needs. And also, the little darker scenario of no new Zelda on the next system until 2028 at the soonest. Which one of these 3 options do you think is the most realistic? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell, as we have far more Zelda and Nintendo in store. Last but not least, a massive thanks to our patreon.com/commonrollpatrons who keep our engines on. Special shoutouts go to Raw producers Zach Johnson and JC Funk, and heroes Holly Wolf, Cheryl, and Garrett Hoy. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.